how to seek and secure and plan a meeting with your lawmakers. And our two guests are both volunteer advocacy coordinators with us, Kirsty Morgan, who is a member of the Kansas City Peace Corps Association and has been a longtime advocacy coordinator there. And our newest advocacy coordinator, Daniel Lindbergh Lang, who is serving as advocacy coordinator in Nevada and is one of the 7,300 evacuees from just about a year ago. So let's get started with this conversation. And Kirsty, I want to start with you. You've had a lot of efforts over time in terms of securing meetings with members of Congress or their staff and Kansas City borders, borders Kansas and Missouri, so you kind of cover both states. And you've done it in both pre and during the pandemic. You did advocacy meetings last fall. So my question is, last fall in the midst of the pandemic, did the process that you used to, try to secure meetings, was it any different than when you were able to do face-to-face meetings in a district office? What was the same? What was different?
Thanks, Jonathan. And I wanted to say hello to everybody. Thanks for having me on this call. Yeah, I would say there have been some slight changes, and some parts of securing the meetings were the same. So the parts that are the same is that my normal process is about a month in advance, I either call or I email with staff members that I've already met with in the past, and I let them know that I'm interested in having a meeting. That's the normal process of securing the meetings. What is different though is, and I wanted to add that I also give them dates. So I give them at least 2 dates to choose from, and then I follow up. So I might email first and then call back maybe a couple days later or a week later, or vice versa. What's different is that now it's virtual meetings. So I know some people decide that they leave it up to the people that are they're having the meeting with, letting them create a meeting. I just do it myself. So I just go ahead and schedule the virtual meeting. And I have in the past gone through NPCA or used someone else's, some of the people who are on our team, they've had their own personal accounts. It's very easy to get your own Zoom account. Or use a work account. So that part, I would just say, go ahead and schedule it yourself. So that is a little bit different. The other thing is who can be invited to the call. So in the past, of course, I've met with my district people and the staffers, and where I live, I do ask for the legislator, the Congress member, but I rarely get that. So I don't really come in expecting it, but I always put that ask out there. In this virtual world that we're in, it's very much an opportunity to meet with folks in DC. So I put out my request to meet with the staffers that are in charge of international affairs. And so what I do is I go through the district people, the ones I've met and had contacts with, and then ask them to arrange it with the DC folks. And so that's how I've been able to secure them. The other thing is that who you can include into these meetings is different. It's wider than it used to be. So I was able to work with other affiliate group members and have them in on these meetings as well. So I had the St. Louis group RPCVs, and then the Central Missouri RPCVs were also in on this call.
Right, so with your senators, you could bring in people from across the state.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's, I guess, a bonus of being in this pandemic, I guess.
Let's turn to Daniel. So Daniel, again, you're recently evacuated, although thank you for your service, and it's now been a year, but you jumped right into this and started organizing meetings in Nevada last fall. So for you, I believe it was kind of a first time experience for you. So what was it like for you as a first time organizer of an office meeting, and what advice would you have for people that might be in our audience and thinking about doing this for the first time?
Well, for me, one of the biggest things is advocating for the Peace Corps felt like a natural extension of being a Peace Corps volunteer. So that was exciting in and of itself. And I really liked how the MPCA provides a lot of resources. I mean, I was new to this, but I looked around the website and looked at the resource documents. And for me, what struck me was that in Nevada, there wasn't a lot of advocacy efforts going on. And so I thought, well, there's somewhere I can step in and try to help. And as an evacuated RPCV, I also wanted to get to know other RPCVs in the state. And I feel like there are a few better ways to meet people than saying, hey, I want to help people. Can you help me help people? So I really liked how, combined with the MPCA resources, these types of trainings, I was able to quickly get up to speed on how do these tend to work, and then Googling what are the congressmen's or congresswomen there, what are their sites, how do I schedule a meeting. Luckily, one of my high school friends had interned for my representative staff, so I was able to also contact her and say, hey, can you get us a meeting? And that was the fastest meeting we could get scheduled. So definitely considering who you already know can really help, even if you're just getting started, because those people knew people who knew people to help get things moving right along.
Now, one of the reasons we scheduled our days of advocacy through the month of March and through the month of April is because sometimes it does take a while to get a meeting scheduled. And so I guess people shouldn't get discouraged if they don't get an immediate response. But one thing I wanted to ask you both is, and then the question of building your team. How did you go about finding other constituents to join you for the meeting? And so Kirsty, you started to talk about the other affiliate group that you brought in. Any other ways that you built other constituents into the meetings?
Yeah, so I did want to give a plug for Jonathan, and because Jonathan, I think reached out, or I'm not sure who reached out first, but I know the Central Missouri Advocacy Coordinator talked to Jonathan, and Jonathan put him in touch with me, and then we got the St. Louis group involved as well. So don't overlook the power of the NPCA in helping you find other people to get involved with these meetings. And then once I got the folks from these affiliate groups with the Missouri meeting, I had to get folks from my own group. And it does help if you're part of an affiliate group, because that's a whole network. And I use the affiliate works or affiliate groups Facebook group and newsletter and all the events I would speak about advocacy. In fact, we just had our open house last Saturday, and at the open house I spoke about advocacy. So it helps if you use already in place methods of promotion. And then once you what I particularly do is I kind of look at my schedule, and I put out once I coordinate with the folks on the legislative side, I put that date out and I just say, here's the event. And, whoever can make it, I just post it, because I basically have to do it around my schedule because it's so busy. And that's, I put the Facebook event out and, people sign up, but I've been promoting it all along.
Daniel, does that sound kind of familiar, or same circumstance for you? Or
Sounds very familiar, especially because I wasn't as connected to people as I got evacuated. So being able to connect with people who had email lists of other RPCVs allowed them to get my name out there as someone who's trying to find people who would be interested in the advocacy meetings. And then another thing that helped me was just scrolling through LinkedIn. I'd noticed other classmates of mine from university who joined the Peace Corps, got evacuated. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, does this sound like something up your alley? And especially what was helpful to me was letting people know that I was open to connecting with more people, because at first I was able to get about a half dozen people through those initial emailing people to let them know I exist. But then as the weeks went on, some people would email me saying, oh, so-and-so mentioned you and let's connect. And so by the end of those initial weeks of reaching out, I had about a dozen people on my email list. And so when a constituent meeting was getting scheduled, I could let them all know and then get a handful who could be available for those. And virtual really helps with that.
Well, one thing I want to mention, that because it was raised, we will at NPCA, we will try to help people connect, as was noted. The one thing we are cognizant of, and I know this is frustrating for some of our folks, understandably, is we do want to be respectful of privacy issues for members of our community. So the way we try to do this, if somebody in our audience is interested in organizing a meeting but isn't sure who to connect with, if they get an item posted up on our board, we will look to that congressional district and reach out from our end to people so that they can connect with the organizer. So as opposed to, we unfortunately can't just share those names of those people. But once somebody does connect with you, and as you pointed out, Daniel, once somebody connects with you, then you're building your base of advocates for the future. We've got time for maybe, let me just actually go to Hadia, one of our fantastic interns. Hadia, are there any questions in the chat at this point?
No, I do not see any in the chat right now.
Okay, great. We will have a Q&A at the end of the meeting when we formally end, if there's other questions people want to go back to. My last question is, since it is virtual, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes here. I would suggest it's especially important for you to hold a preparatory meeting ahead of your actual meeting. Is that the case? And would you agree with that? And how do you go about doing that? Daniel, let's start with you this time.
So for me, what I do is I look at when's the date of our advocacy meeting, and then I try to schedule out about a day or two ahead of that with whomever's going to be in the call. And so what we try to do is I take the documents that we have, the NPCA resources, forward those to everyone who will be involved with it, and then try to chat with them kind of like this on a call, explain out what are the key points, what are the key issues. And what's really helpful for me, because I don't know a lot of these people personally, is we also have a chance to get to know each other, get to know which issues we're passionate about. Because here I am, a Peace Corps volunteer who just became an RPCV a year ago, but there's people who've been RPCVs for dozens of years, and they have a lot of stories that they can tell that I simply don't know about. So these calls are really helpful for revealing some really great things that we can bring up when we get to our prep calls and when we get to the advocacy calls. And even if not everyone can get on the prep call, I'll do a summary email to everybody so that people don't miss any information before we get to the main call. And this is how we set our agenda before we get to the big meeting. Great.
And Kirsty, you got about a minute. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say when I had worked with the other affiliate groups, I met with them first, kind of a pre-meeting to make sure that we all were on the same page, and we, kind of hashed out who was going to take the meatier parts of the meetings, like the legislative parts. And then I had another meeting with everyone else who where we did similar things. We got the agenda formalized, kind of met, eased people's concerns, talked about the issues, but really just assigned roles and got everybody to know that this is what our agenda was, and so they'd feel comfortable about it. But I don't assign any really meaty legislative roles to newcomers. I don't want to scare them off.
Well, thank you both for your time this evening and sharing your thoughts. This is really wonderful, and we really appreciate all you do for the Peace Corps community in your respective states.